Hey everyone, welcome to the Virtual Executive Director podcast. My name is Becky Caldwell. I'm your host. I'm also an executive coach for nonprofit and mission-driven leaders. And I serve as the actual executive director of the Virginia Highlands Festival in Abingdon, Virginia. A few notes before we dive into part 2 of the 4 steps to a successful capital campaign. First of all, if you love this podcast, please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/virtual executive director. It's just like any other auto pay donation service, and your donation goes to directly supporting Virtual Executive Director, the podcast that is helping so many nonprofits stay on track and helping so many nonprofit leaders do their work more effectively. It means the world to me to have you supporting the podcast. I don't have conventional sponsors for the podcast, so I rely on you. The second thing I want to mention is I am now en route to the VCA's annual conference in Richmond. And if you are going to the Virginia Commission for the Arts Artworks Conference, please find me. I want to see you. I want to hug your neck, if that's okay. I won't attack you, but I would love to see you and meet you and hear how the podcast is helping you. I'd love to hear directly from your mouth what you find valuable, what you wish I would cover in the podcast so that I can help you learn the things that you want to learn. So if you're going, I will see you there. Thirdly, I do have executive coaching slots. It's a 13-week program, very affordable. I provide you with tools you need to succeed. We have a weekly call to make sure that everything is staying on track. And I have a whole bunch of resources that I make available to you. So if you have a professional development budget or a technical assistance grant available to you, or you just want to be a better leader and a better human being in the process and get your life back, then just reach out to me. You can get more information on my website, virtualexecutivedirector.com, or by emailing me, becky@virtualexecutivedirector.com. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, yes. Okay. So I don't know about you, but on the previous episode, I took a ton of notes. Now, I want to share with you a hack I've learned for note-taking during a podcast if you don't have access to a pen and paper. Grab a screenshot of that moment in the podcast, and that way it'll show up in your photos, and you'll be like, hey, why do I have this picture of minute 9 and 34 seconds of the Virtual Executive Director podcast? Then that'll help you more easily go back and find that moment that you want to remember, or that you maybe want to actually sit and take notes on. How crazy would it be if 9 minutes and 34 seconds was like that moment for everyone? Now, I actually have no idea what happens at that moment in the podcast this week. So 9:34. Let's see if that's like a note-taking opportunity. Okay, that is it for the announcements. On with the show. So, okay, yeah. How do we know we're ready to go public?
Okay.
That sounds scary.
It's important. Well, it's not really. Actually, it's kind of I'm going to say calculated because it has to be. You want to raise a minimum of 75% of your goal before you go public.
Okay.
Okay? And that's a minimum. I am always much more comfortable having 80 to 85% of my goal in hand, and then opening it up to the general public so everybody becomes a part of the campaign. And this is the big bells and whistles part of it, where you have, press, you have demonstrations. Maybe if you're at a point where you can bring people in, do some, hard hat tours for people. that kind of thing. That would still probably be more your upper echelon donors that you would take on tours like that. But, you can then do kind of open houses to get the public in, because what you're trying to do at this point is raise a lot of smaller donations so that everybody feels invested and committed to the organization and the effort, but they're not going to give you the big dollars, that you need to get over the top. So you want them to be able to kind of finish it up. So if they're going to be giving you, $25, $50, $100, up to say $500 or $1,000.
This is when you sell bricks for $50 or
yeah, that's that phase of the campaign.
Okay.
And which I'm glad you brought up, because actually back in the both the silent and the lead and major gifts phases, you're going to want to have named gift opportunities. And those can look like a lot of different things. Obviously, if you have a facility that you're building, that's the easiest. But if, it's a program, you can have endowments of the program. You can have naming of aspects of the program. So you can do all of that. And you can even name positions.
Right. It's like the endowed chair, the so-and-so endowed, the Bank of America endowed chair or whatever. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So those are going to work up also back there when you're working up all your materials. The named gift opportunities list gets worked up then as well. So.
Okay. So how do you, what are some of the characteristics of a really successful public phase? What does that look like?
That looks like people talking about you. You really, really want to be out there. People should be talking about you. You should have accomplished enough at this point that when you go out there to ask them, they're excited because they see how much you've already accomplished, what you've done. They know you're going to do it, and they know they're the ones that are going to get you there. So,
yeah, that's true.
It's a very exciting phase of the campaign. And then when it's done, you have your private celebration for your major donors and a big public vavoom for everybody that, contributed.
Yeah. And about how long does the public phase take? Does it just take as long as it takes, or
6? I would give it
months?
6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you can see, you're looking at a couple, several years.
Yeah.
Of campaign fundraising.
I need to start now for the Highlands Festival's 75th anniversary.
Yes. This is what we've been talking about. You do have to start now. It's not a moment too soon.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked through the 4 phases. Can you share what are at each phase? What are some pitfalls, or what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen made at each phase?
Okay, and I've seen plenty, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The planning phase is usually the phase that there are the least, because it's just a matter of getting the case written, the list pulled together, doing a mailing, and then the consultant follows up and just takes that on. So unless the consultant, for whatever reason, washes out, that phase should be pretty much on track and finish.
Okay.
It should. The quiet phase, I have worked with many organizations that want to print their materials and are insistent upon it, want to have those materials distributed to people. This is a quiet phase. We're not supposed to be, And what others? Getting out there and asking people when they shouldn't be. Not wanting to organize. Resisting the committee structure. That can be a tough one, especially if it's a leadership person who wants to resist it. So, you really just have to work around that. The organization has to happen, or else the campaign will fail. And that, and as the consultant, you have to tell them that. And they have to understand it. And if they refuse to understand it, then sometimes it's just like the consultant can say, okay, I may not be the one for you. Because, you don't want to be involved in that.
Yeah.
If they won't listen, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Sometimes they won't listen, and that's one of the worst. But that's a real dire, dire circumstance. In general, it really is just the other, touting it, talking about it too much, trying to print the materials. That drives you mad. And why can't I get across to you? You don't even know who your co-chairs are yet.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
So
and
it sounds
then
like jumping the gun is the biggest
Yeah.
mistake you can make in the quiet phase.
Yeah.
And then
it
what
is.
about in the lead and major gifts phase? What are some big mistakes you see there?
That is generally people dragging their feet because they're afraid to actually make the asks. And that's when you need to have a breakthrough of the right person making the right ask that's successful. And I always say, once you have your first success, it's all done. You're good.
Yeah.
But until you get that first, commitment from somebody who, you don't know well, or somebody who isn't already supporting you, people can start dragging their feet, and you might have to keep them moving, keep them moving forward. And that, I think, is probably the big. Also, the cultivation events. You have to continue to make sure, and this is up to the committee, make sure you have enough hosts who are willing to do these events for you. They're not big events. And following up with the people who come. Whatever the follow-up is, making sure that gets done. Because it's very tempting not to do it, and before you know it, you have 50 people that you haven't followed up with.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's overwhelming.
You can see that pitfall, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you keep up with each event as it happens within the following 2 weeks, you make sure you make some contact with the people who came. And the ones who don't want to be bothered will let you know. And the ones who are interested will let you know. And that's where you put, of course, your time and energy. The ones who say that, well, that was great, but no thanks. You just keep them in the loop as the campaign progresses. Make sure that they're included in the updates, and that's how you handle that. And in the public phase, not enough planning is probably your biggest downfall there, because all of these wonderful events, these announcements, and you know this, I think, probably better than many people, they're not going to happen without planning ahead of time. So your public phase campaign, while you're working on the lead and major gifts, which includes foundations and organizations, corporate, while you're working on those committees and you all are working on all of that, that public phase committee needs to be planning all of the bells and whistles that are going to follow. So that the minute you have that goal and you go public, you want it to go boom, 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 so you have it queued up, so to speak. One thing happens, then the next thing happens, then the next. It's like, it's like a good television show. But, you really do. You want to keep that momentum going. Yeah. Momentum is the key to a capital campaign. It's easy to lose momentum. And that's what you really don't want. I call it hitting a plateau. And you feel like you suddenly hit a point, you're spinning your wheels. Sometimes what happens is that you end up changing consultants at that point because you bring on somebody with a different perspective to maybe just, take it in another direction. And I've seen that happen. I've worked with campaigns all the way from beginning to end. I've worked with them from beginning through the lead and major gifts and handing it off at the public phase because somebody else is a better, for that particular organization. They come in, they breathe new life into it. It's an interesting human thing. You're people dealing with people, and you're working together. You have highs, you have lows. The highs are super high during a campaign. Yeah. When you get a large gift pledged over 5 years, it's euphoria. It's euphoria.
Yeah.
And my biggest caveat, once you're all done with all of this, is don't ignore those new prospects that you've just brought on through the campaign. Make sure you keep in touch with them, because I've seen so many campaigns, when it's done, everybody goes, it's done. And they stop communicating with the peace people, and they let them go by the wayside, and the campaign gift is the only gift they ever get.
Okay, I have a question about the new people who you bring in. If the sort of promise of a capital campaign is we're only going to ask you for this once.
Hmm.
And then you bring in a bunch of new donors. Is it okay, for lack of a better word, to ask them for an annual gift once the capital campaign is over?
That's the
Or will that
idea.
be like a betrayal of trust or no?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. No, the capital campaign ask is the one-time only ask. But once they've made that gift, they've made a commitment to your organization. Therefore, you are going to come back to them for annual support because they've made that commitment and they want their commitment to count. So
Okay.
therefore, they're going to want to continue supporting you annually because now they're invested in you and they want to see you succeed. So no, it's actually expected that you're going to come back to them and say,
Oh,
thank you so much for being a part of our successful capital campaign. The benefits are wonderful. We're really charging ahead. And now here we are at the end of the year, and we're asking for your support to make sure that we can continue into the future, blah, 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 all the verbiage you know very, very well.
right.
Yeah, so yeah, you really
Okay.
basically want to make them a part of your family now.
Can you tell us about the most successful, and you get to tell us what success means, and I mean I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming it means money, but maybe also
Mm-hmm.
impactful capital campaign you've been part of?
That's quite a good question. It's a kind of a tough one, but one immediately springs to mind. Um, I was working with the Indiana Historical Society. It's kind of an interesting story. And when I first went to Indianapolis to meet with them, it was a wonderful place, great organization. They were on the second floor of a little building in the middle of town. It took me hours to find them, hours to find them. And I was asking people, can you tell me where the Indiana Historical, nobody knew. Nobody knew. I mean, I was like, this place is invisible. I finally found it. It was on the second floor of a building with some, they had some pretty drab offices, and they told me so. And we came in and we talked about the campaign. And long story short, I was working with them. They're the ones I think I told you about when we did work up their named gift opportunities list for this new building they were going to build. I put their boardroom at $1 million, and they looked at me and they said, "Who's going to name our boardroom for $1 million?" Well, what was the first gift that went? Their boardroom for $1 million. And they were
Wow.
like, "Oh my goodness, how did that
No naming
happen?"
opportunity is too small.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable because all the right people are coming into that boardroom will see that name on that wall. So, boop, there it went. And we worked together for years on this campaign, but they did everything right. They were so good. They listened. They got their leadership. They did their materials at the right time. They listened to us about the named gift opportunities, and they benefited from that. And if you go online now and Google the Indiana Historical Society, take a look at that building that they built. I mean, oh my God, that was the public phase for that was stupendous. I mean, we raised millions of dollars. They
Wow.
they used granite from Indiana. They made it gorgeous. It's a gorgeous building. And everybody in that community, in that state, invested in that historical society. And it's gorgeous. It's just gorgeous.
Mm.
That, to me, was a real success for these reasons. It started out as, oh, this can never happen. That's ridiculous. Okay, we'll try it. Let's see. Let's do a planning study. Your planning study says we can do it. Okay, well, then let's go. That's never going to work. Oh, please. We got what? That's great. Let's go. Form this committee, form that committee, form this committee, form that and everything just worked so beautifully because they listened and they did it, and
Yeah.
they reaped all the rewards for it.
Wow, that is so great. And how long did that campaign take?
That campaign took pretty close to 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But they raised $30 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Well, my
they had a big
1
goal.
to 10 million this seems really doable.
Yeah, so they raised a lot of money, and they made a lot of friends along the way too. A
Mm.
lot of cultivation went on with that. A lot of cultivation.
Oh, I bet.
But
Yeah.
it was a big campaign. It was a big campaign, but on a smaller scale. I'm going to say Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic that we did, trying to raise. We wanted to raise $150,000. They'd never raised more than
Aw.
they never raised more than $30,000, and it was for their unit in Western Massachusetts. And so 150,000 goal was big. It was big, and I did the planning study for them, and I said you can definitely raise 150. I'd go higher, but they didn't want to. They were scared. And in the first 9 months, we ended up raising $350,000.
Oh my
I said,
gosh.
no, I knew you could do better, but
Wow.
they wouldn't listen. They were the sweetest people. But yeah, we raised $350,000 in that one in the first year, and then the Great Recession hit. So
Oh, well, good
yeah,
thing they had all that capital.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about getting started with the feasibility study, because this is before we even know if we can do a capital campaign. How are some ways that organizations fund a feasibility study? Because it's not direct programming, so it's hard.
right.
It seems like it would be hard to get that paid for. How do they do it? How do people do it?
There are different ways to do it. There are actually some foundations that will grant that will underwrite that. So I check that out and see if there isn't a foundation that does it in your area, because there could be. And specifically, they would fund feasibility. I would use feasibility study, planning study. I think maybe a name that was coined by Charles Webb, who was the man I was working with. I think he came up with the planning study itself. But a feasibility study, everybody knows what that is. So I would search and see if there isn't a foundation that might underwrite the cost of that. Sometimes there's a major donor whose contribution to the campaign will be to underwrite that expense. That will be their gift, to just underwrite the planning study itself, and get that right off the plate. Just have it done. Other ways to do it: you can capitalize it as an expense, make it part of the capital campaign budget, so that it will come out of any monies that are raised for the capital campaign. That makes an assumption, though, that you're actually going to be able to do the campaign. So you would only do that if you were really pretty certain it's going to come out. Yeah, go. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I wouldn't go that way. Okay. So so getting someone to underwrite it is one way. Getting it funded is another way, or talking with the consultant and seeing what you can work out with the consultant. Some are more flexible than others. I've seen studies go anywhere from $3,000 a month to $5,000 a month over 4 months, which gives you an idea of what you might be looking at.
What do you wish people knew before they got started?
I wish people knew how long it's going to take to actually conduct, and the commitment it's going to take to actually conduct a successful capital campaign. Often people think, we want to do it, it's going to be doable, jump in with both feet, let's go. Wait a minute, we're not raising the money we need. Let's drop it. And, they end up fizzling out. And we can just skip the planning phase of it. We don't really need all those committees. You do. Mm-hmm. If you're really going to do a serious, and if you're talking a large gift capital campaign, we had all of those committees for the Recording for Blind capital campaign to raise $150,000.
Wow, and that's how they raised more than double.
That's right.
Okay.
So
so don't skimp on the committees.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. So that attention to detail, knowing what it is exactly what it is you want to go for and why, making that case as strong as you possibly can, because that's your key, really, to people wanting to talk with you at all.
Yeah.
Great.
So. Wow, that's okay. I have many pages of notes.
Yeah. Well,
um,
it's it's a
is there?
process.
Yeah, it is. It's a long process, but I think when it's done well and successfully, then you've increased your base of support, the number of people who know about you. You've increased awareness about your organization and what you do, like why you exist,
Mhm.
and you have a thing, either a building or a program or an endowment that can support you
Mhm.
for a lot
And then you have a
longer.
big accomplishment under your belt. You really
Yeah.
do have something that you can say, "Look what we did. We did
Mhm.
this," and you can be very proud of it, and you can very much make people aware of it, because
Yeah.
that's one of the great benefits. Is I can't really think of anything that can bring you more attention than a good capital campaign.
Mhm.
Uh, if you conduct a good capital campaign and you really ace it, it's just a real feather in your cap, and it really brings a lot of integrity to the organization. And if done right, they can be so much fun. You really
Mhm.
do. You come away with a lot of great memories of it, and the successes are wonderful.
Mm.
And you have to be on your toes, and you have to be ready to anticipate and handle all different kinds of things. But it's never dull. It is
Yeah.
never dull.
Is there an age of an organization? Like, can a brand new startup expect to run a successful capital campaign?
That's a really, really good question. Um, I think it will be difficult
Mhm.
because they don't have a track record,
Mm.
and that's probably the biggest obstacle they would run into. I would actually recommend that they um, build their donor support, place their energy on building their individual donors, their organizational relationships, getting their programming in place, and getting themselves up and running and building a track record. The same way you have to do for like national foundations. They're going to want at least a 3-year map that they can look at and see whether or not this is going to be viable. That
Yeah.
would be their most difficult challenge, is getting someone to make a considerable contribution to something that it's like the stock market. Can I count on this or not? And if you don't have a track record, it's going to be difficult to get people to commit that way.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yep. So my advice would be focus on building up your donor base first. You're getting your foundations then behind you, and
Mhm.
then once you're maybe 5 years into it, and you have a reason for a capital campaign,
Mhm.
then do it, but not before.
Oh, it's so
So,
great, Lynn. Thank you. This is a ton of information. Um, Before we wrap it up, how can remind everybody how they can get in touch with you and reach out to you if they're ready to conduct their feasibility study, or maybe they've hit a plateau and they need a different consultant to work with?
if anyone has any questions or they want to get in touch with me, they can reach me by phone at 413-623-6141. That's
Okay.
Terrell and Graham Consulting. Or they can go online to my website, which is terrellgrahamconsulting.org, or they can just email me at terrellyn@gmail.com.
Okay. And I will include these links in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. All right. Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Lynn Terrell, thank you again for your wisdom and your advice and your expertise in this area of running a successful capital campaign. All right, to recap the 4 steps, it is the planning phase, the silent phase, the lead or major gifts phase, and finally the public phase. Now that you know what to do, go out and do it. And if you found this helpful, please share it with someone. Share it with your development department, with your board, especially with, say, your finance committee, your board chair. Lots of people, I think, will benefit from learning this information, and use it. Use this podcast to reinforce what you already know to be true to your board. I find that third-party validation of my ideas gets a lot more attention than just me saying the same thing over and over again. So feel free to share this with your board members who may be a little bit resistant or not understanding why you need such a long time to run a successful capital campaign. If you'd like to get in touch with me directly, remember my email is becky@virtualexecutivedirector.com. You can also find me on Facebook. We have a Facebook page for Virtual Executive Director and the Executive Director Mastermind. If you're looking for a group of like-minded people, nonprofit and mission-driven leaders who are available for peer-to-peer support to help you at any given moment that you have a WTF day or incident, then look for us on Facebook and ask to join. Remember, if you don't fill out the 3 questions, I automatically decline your request because, look, I don't have time to chase you down and get you to read the instructions. So sorry if that was you recently, but try again. And this time, answer the 3 questions because it is a vetted group. I want to make sure that everybody in it is a real person and does what the group is there for, which is running a nonprofit or mission-driven company. And that's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, we shine brighter together.